Hello, freaks and geeks. Welcome to NeverGetBusted.com. I'm your host, Barry Cooper, and today I'm going to talk to you about one of the largest scams in U.S. history. The use of narcotic detector dogs. That's right. The use of narcotic detector dogs has allowed the government to seize billions in assets, and narcotic detector dogs are unreliable. In this episode, I want to teach you how drug dogs work. I'm going to show you footage of a false alert and a true alert so you can see the difference. And then I'm going to give you the only tip I know to help you beat a drug dog. Let me give you some backstory. Years ago, in 2006, I was the first whistleblower to prove police canine drug dogs false alert. I released a video titled Never Get Busted Volume 1 Traffic Stops. And in that video, there was a chapter dedicated to canines where I included footage of a police officer on purpose making his drug dog false alert. I actually paid a little over $1,000 to get a police officer to do that for me. You'll notice his face is hidden, so you can't tell it's him. But the community went wild. Police went crazy. They called me a liar and really tried to do a lot of damage. Well, now it's being widely reported that drug dogs false alert, and we understand that drug dogs, in fact, do false alert. Let me explain how a drug dog, exactly how a drug dog is trained and how a drug dog works. First, you got to find the right dog to train. You want to find a dog with a high prey drive. You know, everybody's seen the dog that will not stop jumping up and down on you, that chases his ball, and no matter what, it can be 100 degrees, and you can throw a stake in one direction and a ball in the other direction, and he's going to chase the ball. He just wants the ball, the ball, the ball, the ball. So you got to find a dog with a high prey drive. Then it's just a matter of scenting his toy with the odor of a contraband, let's say marijuana. Once the dog thinks his reward smells like marijuana, he'll start reacting when he smells actual marijuana. The problem with that is a dog smells like you and I see. I gave the stew analogy in that video years ago, and I'm going to give you that same analogy now. When we see a pot of stew, humans, we can see the corn, the carrots, the potatoes, the black pepper, but we only smell one odor. It's grandma's stew. Well, a dog's the opposite. The dog can't see really well, but he can smell each individual odor like you and I can see each individual ingredient. A dog can... And he doesn't just smell grandma's stew. He smells, carrots, corn, peas, and whatever grandma put in the stew. He has a way of separating these odors. So when you scent, say, a tennis ball, his reward, with marijuana, the dog smells a tennis ball and marijuana. So you can actually hide a tennis ball with no odor of marijuana on it, and the dog will alert. So we have to train that dog not to alert on tennis balls. It's exactly the same process when we're teaching a dog not to alert on plastic bags. Because if you hide a plastic baggie of marijuana and you teach the dog to alert on that, the dog is smelling marijuana, plastic bag, and the handler's scent who touched the bag. So now the dog starts learning he'll get rewarded or he'll get paid if he alerts to plastic bags or his owner's scent. So what drug dog teams are not doing is teaching their dogs to discriminate between odors. And it's a simple exercise, but it needs to be repeated at least once a week. Now, I've trained hundreds of narcotic detector dogs. In fact, I was the first police officer in U.S. history to own his own drug dog. I trained my own dog, so when they hired me, they got me and the dog. At that time, there were very few drug dog teams on the street. This is like 20 years ago. And if a police officer wanted to be a canine officer, they purchased a dog that's already trained and put it with a handler. If the handler left the police force, the dog stayed with the department and they just gave it to another handler. Not me. I trained my own dog. Then I started teaching classes on how to train narcotic detector dogs. So I've trained hundreds of dogs, and one thing I ensured in my classes was this discrimination method, teaching dogs to discriminate between odors. And the way you do it is, okay, we've got a dog that will alert on tennis balls, plastic, handler, owner, and marijuana. So what we do, in one room, we hide a bunch of plastic baggies. 50 feet away, we hide a bunch of tennis balls. Then 50 feet away, in another location, we have the handler rub his scent all over something. And then 50 feet away, at the end of the exercise, we hide marijuana with all these odors mixed in. Marijuana, tennis ball, handler's odor, plastic baggies. We bring the dog to the first station. We bring him to where the plastic baggies are. When he starts alerting, we tell him no. Then we take him to where the tennis balls are. Tell him no. Then we take him to where his handler rubbed odors everywhere. We tell him no. Then we take him to the pile of all the odors, including marijuana. And when he alerts there, we pay him. We give him his reward. See, the dog smelled, plastic baggies, but I got in trouble for alerting on that a while ago. Tennis balls. I smell my handler's scent. But I smell something there, different marijuana. Let me give it a try. And he'll alert and he gets paid. And that's how you teach a dog to alert on only contraband. But these police dog teams are not doing that. We call them trashy. They're dirty. You can get the dog to alert on almost anything. A final thing I want to mention that you need to understand the rest of this video is dogs can't smell through anything. You know, I have seized large loads of contraband on my dog alerting to a gas tank. And people ask, how did your dog smell through the gas tank, through the gasoline, through the PVC pipes that the contraband was in? How do you smell through all of that? And that's a fair question, but the answer is the dog didn't smell through all of that. It's that the odor of the contraband permeated and developed a scent cone on the outside of that gas tank. That's right, odors permeate even through plastic. If you look at a plastic baggie under a microscope, you can see it has little microscopic pores. And the way I illustrated this in the classes I taught to, thousands of police officers across the United States, is at the beginning of the class, I would pour tuna fish into a Ziploc baggie, and I would pass it around, Ziploc it, I would pass it around, and the class would sniff it. They couldn't smell the tuna. By lunchtime, before I dismissed everybody for lunch, I passed the same baggie around, and you could slightly smell the odor of tuna. That's because the odor of the tuna had time to permeate out of those out of the pores in the plastic bag. So dogs don't smell through anything. Odors permeate out. So my dog would alert on the scent cone on the outside of the gas tank. He would, I smell metal. I smell gasoline. And I smell PVC pipe. But I also smell marijuana. Pow, 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 pow. And he would alert. Remember that. Odors permeate out. Dogs don't smell through anything. This leads to the question, now that you know how drug dogs are trained and how they work, how how have they turned this into one of the largest scams in U.S. history? There are only 3 probable cause reasons a police officer can use to search your car in a traffic stop without a search warrant. The first is an informant tip. If a reliable informant tells a police officer you've got marijuana in your car, he can stop you and search you without a warrant. The second reason is called plain sight. If the officer approaches your car during a legitimate traffic stop and he sees a baggie of marijuana on your dash, he can search your car without your permission or without a search warrant. And it goes further than just the eyes, the plain sight. It's if the officer can detect that a crime is being committed in his presence with the use of his senses, which includes if he smells the odor of contraband, he can search your car without a warrant. The third reason and the final reason a police officer can gain probable cause to search your car is through a canine alert. So there's only 3: an informant tip, plain sight search, or a canine alert. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is the same problem I told you about in 2006, and it still holds true today. If there's not an informant tip and the officer can't gain probable cause through a plain sight search of the automobile, and then he walks his dog around the car and the dog doesn't alert, all he has to do is cue his dog with a little command or even some invisible body language that you don't see. I see it, you don't. And cues the dog to give a false alert. But I used to testify in courts all over the U.S. trying to convince these courts to make a ruling that drug dogs would false alert. In fact, defense attorney after defense attorney tried through filings to allow me to show the court that the drug dog in question in that case will false alert in a courtroom in front of the judge. I was confident then, and I'm confident today, I can make any drug dog false alert in a courtroom in front of the judge. But they kept striking it down. They will not allow a dog in the courtroom to do this. So I'm in North Dakota. There are some men that got busted with 50 pounds of marijuana in the trunk of their car. These are both, there's 2 of them. They're both nonviolent, never had a criminal history. This was their first arrest. I was called to testify. Not only was I called to testify as an expert witness, but the defendants had enough money to hire a second expert witness who was a Harvard animal behavior scientist / professor. This guy had a resume from here to the moon. So myself and this animal behavior scientist testified to the judge that this dog didn't false alert, but the dog didn't alert. We showed on video that the dog never scratched, which is called an aggressive alert, and he never sat down, which is called a passive alert, but the handler called an alert. We're showing this judge that we don't see any indications of an alert. Then the canine officer takes the stand. The defense lawyer did a fantastic job cross-examining him and asked, how does your dog indicate to you that he's smelling contraband? And the officer testified he sits when he smells contraband. The defense attorney played the video in front of the officer, in front of the judge. This is the 3rd time the judge has seen the video, and asked the officer, and at any time during your search of my client's automobile, did your dog sit? I kid you not, the police officer said, no, but he wanted to. I thought we won, but we didn't. We lost that suppression hearing. So I learned at that moment, even if I ever do get to prove in court that a drug dog false alerts, I also learned that judges will allow an officer to use anything to say my dog alerted. Since then, there have been many cases come out, case law, that proves exactly what I just told you. The officer said, no, my dog didn't scratch and my dog didn't sit, but my dog's breathing pattern changed, and that's an alert. Or my dog wagged his tail, that's an alert. Or my dog looked at me, that's an alert. And the courts have ruled that if all the officer has to do is say, my dog alerted, and it's alert. It's considered an alert. So I quit testifying in courts about drug dogs because I realized and came to the conclusion that there has to be some kind of secret, unwritten instructions handed down by the powers that be, possibly the Department of Justice. I don't know who, but they have told the judges never rule against a drug dog team. Because y'all, judges aren't stupid. We're talking about people who went through law school, and that's not easy. We're talking about people who got elected as judges or appointed as judges, so they got some things going on. They're not stupid, but they're failing to rule that drug dogs false alert. It's got to be for a reason. I think I found that reason. It's called asset forfeiture. It's widely reported. I'll just read this to you. Officers can take cash and property from people without convicting or even charging them with a crime. Yes, really. Through the highly controversial practice known as civil asset forfeiture. Last year, which was in this article, they were referring to 2014, according to the Institute for Justice, the Treasury and Justice Departments deposited more than $5 billion. I almost want to go, $5 billion. Yeah, they deposited more than $5 billion in their respective asset forfeiture funds. That same year, the FBI reports that burglary losses topped out at only $3.5 million. So there was this viral thing that went around the internet that cops are taking more property than burglars. So we're talking about billions of dollars that are being taken based on these drug dogs giving probable cause for search. Listen to me. A dog should never, ever be able to decide a Fourth Amendment issue anywhere. Period. You know, I'm not the only one reporting this type of stuff. Radley Balco, January 2019, Washington Post. By the way, Radley Balco is one of my favorite authors. He wrote a book about the police state, and he's a columnist, lots of places, and he's dead on accurate. He's just really good. He's one of my favorite reporters. So he writes, if the Fourth Amendment rights of drug suspects hinge on drug dogs, one would think the accuracy of those dogs would be something the Supreme Court might want to investigate. You'd be wrong. In the 2005 case, Illinois versus Cabela's, the court ruled that a dog sniff after a traffic stop is not an unreasonable search under the Fourth Amendment. Then he goes on and explains that there have been many studies that prove 50% of the time, over 50% of the time, the drug dog that alerted, there weren't drugs there or it was a false alert. So flipping a coin is more accurate than using a drug dog. At the beginning of this video, I promised you some footage. I'm going to show you the difference in a drug dog false alert and a true alert. So take a look at this video with me. Now, I have to warn you, this first video is grueling to watch because it's 4 minutes, but you need to see it. You need to watch how ridiculous this is. This video can be found on my website, nevergetbusted.com. I published an article called Police Dogs and False Alerts, expert canine trainer Barry Cooper reveals the truth. This page has had literally millions of hits. Lawyers use this page a lot and contact me through this page. So it's an exhaustive article that teaches you everything you need to know about drug dogs, sort of like this video. So here we go. Here's the first video I want you to see, and this is a false alert. So the officer's got his dog. You see it's a German Shepherd. First thing I noticed, this dog is pulling away from the automobile. Remember, dog, you need the right dog to train. That's a dog with a ball drive. Well, this dog doesn't have a ball drive, or he would be looking for the ball more aggressively in the automobile. But the dog's distracted and wants to, look at other things, and you'll see him repeat that. So here's the officer walking the dog by the driver's door. The reason this officer spends so much time by the driver's door is because that's where most canine alerts are generated from. Because when somebody smokes a joint or handles contraband, they touch the door handle, and it leaves microscopic dust or an odor there for the dog to indicate. So now you notice the handler's having a really difficult time keeping the dog searching the car. There he goes for the third time. The dog's trying to walk away from the car. So this automatically tells me they started with a dog that didn't have the proper ball drive to be out, to be trained for a drug dog. So they got the wrong dog here. So here we go. The officer is continuing to tell the dog, search here, look here, search here, look here. And we'll probably have my editor fast forward some of this so you don't have to watch the full 4 minutes. You see the driver took the dog back to the driver's side door again. Keeps saying, check here, check here, check here. He's like telling the dog, please alert, please alert, please alert. The dog's already been exposed to this area of the car twice, which is enough. If you keep bringing a dog back to the same spot, he's likely to alert. That's one of the indicators, cues the handlers give the dogs by keeping them in one spot, constantly saying, check here, check here, check here, which will cue a false alert in the dog. At this point of the search, I already knew this was going to be a false alert without having to watch the rest of it. You see how much time the handler is spending around the driver's door? And he's not going to stop until the dog responds like he wants the dog to respond. You'll see that in a minute. By the way, there's less than a gram of a controlled substance in this automobile. This is a Texas search. Okay, you see the handler, he can't get an alert, so he walks the dog away from the car. He goes to talk to his partner. I don't know what they're saying. Now he pulls the dog's toy out. See this toy that he's bringing out of his pocket right there. And you see how interested the dog was? He's trying to get his prey drive back going. Now he says, okay, now go find your toy. And what does the officer do? Takes him right back to the door handle for the 10th time. I'm not keeping count, but the dog's already searched that area. And then, here we go. Boom! The dog finally sits down. The officer calls an alert, which gives him probable cause to search the automobile, which was against the wishes of the driver who refused consent to search. So that's a false alert. Now, this other video is only like less than 30 seconds long. I hope you can see the difference here. This is a true alert. Now, see this handler? You can see him in the front of the car, and this dog is moving fast. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's looking for. The handler's not hanging up in one spot to get the dog alert. He's not giving him any cues. He's trying to pull the dog away from that right tail light, and he can't pull the dog away. The dog reaches up and scratches. That's a true alert. By the way, there's 10 pounds of marijuana hidden in the fender well of that car. So how do you beat a drug dog? In 2006, I taught put a cat in your car so the dog would be more interested in the cat instead of looking for his ball or contraband. I said spray fox urine on the tires. The dog will hang up smelling that fox urine instead of looking for contraband. That doesn't work anymore, and don't do it. Because remember, I told you, a dog, all he has to do is show interest in something, and the officer is going to call it an alert, whether he wags his tail or changes his breathing patterns. So if there's a cat in the car and he's interested in that, the officer is going to claim he's smelling contraband. If he smells it gets hung up on a tire, and he's really sniffing the fox urine, the officer is going to call that as an alert. So don't do that. I only know and have one tip that may help you beat a drug dog team, and this has worked for a lot of my clients. When the drug dog team is deployed, you announce politely, but announce boldly, hey, I know that there are police officers who make their drug dogs false alert. This puts the officer on notice. Sometimes they don't care and they're going to do it anyway, but this has worked in the past. I've seen it work, and the officer's like, oh man, I can't make my dog false alert because the guy knows about it. Last tip, and remember this, never get aggressive with cops. Hit the like button and the share buttons. Turn on your notification buttons so as I'm releasing these YouTube videos, you'll be the first one to see it. And leave a comment for me. I get in there and I answer all the comments I can. So please leave a comment. Until next time, I'm Barry Cooper with Never Get Busted. Peace, love, and never get busted.